And we now continue with F.A.T.A.L, Fantasy Adventure to Adult Lechery, or if you're more cosmopolitan and have chosen the second edition, From Another Time, Another Land, Chapter 10, Combat. The chapter covers combat between a small number of foes. Combats of larger scale are covered in Chapter 18, Warfare. That's right, 2 different chapters. I suppose some games do that. They cover a normal, small-scale individual combat and then a larger mass combat. And I suppose for a game that is 800 to 900 and some pages, that's kind of to be expected, but still, what can you say? Combat occurs in rounds. Each round of the game represents 10 seconds. Since rounds are based on time, so are actions. Many actions may occur in a round, while some may take multiple rounds. Following is a table explaining the duration of actions. Next we have the natural healing chart, which has percentages for various ages and how quickly they heal, including infants, which heal at 30% daily. For all of your infant injuring and healing needs, which F.A.T.A.L probably has some of in whoever's deranged mind comes up with scenarios that has injured infants, which probably is anybody that plays F.A.T.A.L. I'd prefer not to think about that anymore. I don't know if there were scenarios for this game. There probably was at least an intro one somewhere. And again, I'd like not think about that. As much as some of F.A.T.A.L is loathsome, you can't fault him for a lot of his exhaustive resources and offering he just knocks himself out on the in-depth detail that he goes into for things that could really give you a lot of information to present a compelling story or a situation or scenario with. It's just the fact that he adds so many things that are not necessary. But if you can leave those out or ignore them for what the useful things are, the practical details, there's things in F.A.T.A.L that are really useful or could be useful if you wade through the rest of the crap. And then you also see now he has the official F.A.T.A.L cleaver about to attack Garfield's John Arbuckle, because that seems like something Byron Hall would do, would be to kill John Arbuckle. So there's always that. It says most characters can have up to 10 attacks. I think 5 melee attacks and 5 hurled or ranged weapons. That's a lot per turn. And what is that? Is that a creature with a shield and a feather duster, or Whammer looks like? Okay. And what is this cumulative damage adjustment by cumulative armor type? Do you keep adding damage to armor that they keep getting while you fight them? How do they keep getting armor? Does somebody keep bringing it to them? That seems like you would attack this person that keeps bringing them armor while you keep piling up damage against them. And what is this stabbing, hacking, pounding, burning, freeze? Where did those come from? Those weren't part of the earlier deal that we had. Something's fishy. Plate, neck, gorgets, corselets, leather. Kind of bog standard. Maybe a little more descriptive than normal, but okay. And now we see we've also got electrocuting, corroding, sonic, wind, and brawling. With not a whole lot of armors getting a whole lot of protection against wind, which probably doesn't matter that much since most of them don't get much against corroding either. Not even sure why these have stats, but they do. because that's just how Fatal rolls. And then next here he explains to you all about how you've got all your sonic attacks and what they do and brawling and all this, and how it's much easier to hit a needle with a maul than with the tip of a dagger, which, although I didn't understand that at first, makes sense. You take a tip of a dagger, it's really hard to hit the needle with that. You take a maul, and you pretty much can't miss. So I got that. Now, for some reason, suggested threshold, TH, if non-living and immobile, is 99 for a needle. Everything else has dash. I don't know why exactly. Maybe it makes sense, but for some reason it's over in a separate column by itself that's like 5 miles wide. But that sort of strange space management seems to occur again and again in Fatal, so I really don't question it anymore. And there is an NPC morale or drive chart with percentages and numbers and levels for, I guess, whether the enemy breaks ranks or likes you or something. And then there's a breathing chart for if the enemy can breathe. I don't really understand that. Seems like that's one of those proficiencies you either have or you don't. And then it just kind of goes on from there. Yeah. Next up, we find the falling and damage chart, which goes from 0.5 seconds to 10 something, which is 1/10 of a round, and it goes meters per second, feet per second, miles per hour, total feet fallen, damage given in D8 to then D10s in various D20s actually, and basically terminal velocity. The 6th second of falling, a character has reached terminal velocity and will not accelerate farther but continues to fall at this rate. And terminal velocity happens to be 6d20, which is about 120 total possible damage life points, LPs. So that sounds about right, give or take. So I'm good with that. So he's got that down, which is, I'm not doing the math, but that looks about right. Next, we find the rules for home advantage. All creatures in the game who claim territory gain a home advantage of +5 to all rolls during combat while defending their home territory. It's psychological, and such games that involve players from another territory. The opposite is applicable. There's no disadvantage. It applies in situations which two creatures or parties compete with each other. One is in home territory and the other is not. While I can see that, I think I pretty much would have to say these are the heroes, they get +5, end of story. I just don't get this home advantage thing. That's great if you're a baseball team. I'm not really going that far into it for a role-playing game, although I know he would love to have put a chart in there, but I think even he couldn't have justified it, so even he was forced to leave it out, but I'm sure he wanted to. He probably tried to find some way and just was not able to do it. If it weren't for the fact that it would be like the most boring episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, or even the original Star Trek, or some other show with an engineer reading the most inane technobabble, I would go into the crucial damage section with, if the weapon is smaller than the size of the victim, then you add plus so many to your D100 roll. If the weapon size is larger than the target size, if crucial damage has occurred, proceed to determine the severity of the and 1% and 40% if the target is 6 to 10% of what you needed. And oh my god, how could you even possibly, a combat would take a day and a half to do for one person. How did this ever, who said this was a good idea? And this went through The guy claims that there was more than one person that worked on this, so not only did he write it, and not only did he expect and rely on other people to tell him, hey, I think this doesn't work over here, he had other people that then had to have other people and a committee that all got together at each step through these sections and said, yes, this works. I think all these chapters and rules come together perfectly. Yeah, so crucial damage, not so good. Now in the section for reach in combat, we come to the size of the attacker and the defender may affect the accessibility in the general area. A dwarf with a dagger may be unable to attack the head of a troll. Reach is not applicable for ranged attacks. And then here's your steps. Add the height of the attacker and the weapon length together. And if he has higher ground, the height's added to the ground. And the sum must equal or exceed the height of the defender to be able to attack the general body location. And then you subtract other things, and then roll a d10, but re-roll 10s. And if the sum is less than and then if the attack is a called shot, proceed to the called area. And then general body location, and then you table 10-9 and observe the location of the blow. And then note the location of the body and the general and the wings and the tail and the thing and the bam. And if the target is a humanoid, roll on 10-9 below. And then we go to location and damage. And here we get into something a little more entertaining, but also pretty damn depressing. But we'll get into that anyway, so here we go. And I'm just going to read a section here. In this way, crucial hits may range from 2 to 8 times normal damage. For instance, if a bipinous polearm delivers 20 life points of damage to a small child, because that's just the example I'm going to use, totally at random, with no particular meaning behind this perhaps odd choice, a blow to the head would do times 8 damage, or 160 life points. While if it hacked the child's arm, again, since we're throwing out hypotheticals, it would only do times 4 damage, or 80 life points to that small defenseless child with a polearm. The location
of body, general and specific, should only be calculated for humanoid creatures. Wings or tails will not be found on the chart below, and crucial damage is determined by the main master for those. And then you roll, and it's got right legs and torsos and arms, and everything's got times 1 or times 2. And he's got a chart for those, with those broken down into right leg being a die roll of 1, twice. And I have no idea why he divided it up like this. There's only a few things that have times 2, everything else was times 1. But for some reason he decided he really needed to divide this up into a table and put everything on its own line, because F.A.T.A.L is the most incredibly complex role-playing game in the history of mankind, and will survive long after the cockroaches have been irradiated by our mutually assured nuclear destruction, or whatever their logo is. It's something like that. I'm not sure. My brain has attempted to escape out my ear more than twice, so I'm doing a good job keeping it in there and continuing to review, so I think I'm doing pretty good. And now we hit on the critical hit chart, and we see the hacking legs section, and 1% on the percent dice roll, which is what you do, gets you distal phalanges, or smallest bone at the end of the toes. And then you roll d6, re-rolling 6s to determine which tip of the toe, because that's all important. You might get a different damage result or have some other bizarre, I don't know, affliction, depending on which tip or certain part of your phalanges gets injured. And then let first big toe and fifth pinky toe. I'm not even, is that even a, let 1 equal big toe and 5 equal pinky toe. Okay. Pinky toe. There's a 10% chance that the opponent's foot is disabled for D2 days, halving their movement rate. 2% is middle phalanges, proximal phalanges. It's like an anatomy textbook, which he did go to college, so I guess this is his proof. Because this was before the internet was huge, really, so I guess we can give him credit for that. And you see there's a flexor diglorium, and the patella, kneecap, fibia, the tibia or shin, and he just goes on, and this is just the hacking leg section here. So he's got a lot of love to give to the critical hit chart, or crucial damage. I suppose I should be calling it. Wouldn't want to confuse it with any other game that has really not as many charts as F.A.T.A.L. As much as that charge has been leveled at games like Dungeons and Dragons, F.A.T.A.L really has them outdone, hands down. So, hats off to him for that. Alright, now the hacking torsos portion of our program.
Right breast, then the nipple and surrounding area is hacked, causing the opponent to suffer minus 15 strength with the appropriate arm for 2d6 days. Now, before you stop and think about that for a moment, your eyes are immediately drawn to 4% on the hacking torsos chart, simply titled anus. While the hacking object did not enter the ass, it gashed the orifice, causing them to feel pain during the following 2d4 days, involving defecating and, if female, alternative sexual practices. Because males that engage in quote-unquote alternative sexual practices don't feel pain if their anus has been... I don't really... Okay. Now, if you rolled a 5%, the rectum or short muscular tube for storage of excretion was hit. And the hacking weapon enters the rectum mid-stroke, and the opponent feels pain. And wait for it, during the following D4 weeks involving defecating and a female alternative sexual practices, because guys are tough, I guess. I don't know. 25% chance the hacking releases. This is one of my favorites. I've always remembered this. During the hacking of the rectum, there is a 25% chance that the hacking releases roll 1d6. On a 1 to 5, this is the number of chunks released. On a 6, it is runny instead. Chunks of defecation from the confines of the body. So not only on a roll of 5% when hacking the torso does your weapon somehow divinely become guided by Providence into the rectum of your opponent, you then roll percentage, and if you get a 25 or less, then you roll a d6, and if you roll a 1 through 5, 1 to 5 turds, essentially, are released. If you roll a 6, it turns out your opponent was not feeling good that day, had a stomach flu, and just diarrheaed all over your weapon. Why? What could possibly have possessed this man or this group of people, as he claims helped write this, that he never has or will name, that I'm aware of anyway. Maybe he did, I don't know. Why this incredible depth on this particularly unlikely happening? Because, well, look at it. Because it's what it is. I don't know. There's really nothing more to say about it. There's a lot that can be said, but there's nothing that really needs to be said. It's a critical hit on the anus that causes turds to fall out. What more can be said? Now, it's important to remember that when you roll a 26%, you can hit the Cowper's glands, which are about the size of peas and produce a lubricating fluid when sexually aroused. It doesn't... Is this a male, female? I mean, obviously, but... Roll to determine whether the left or right gland are hit, are the center of the hacking. This wound necessitates a health check at threshold 50 to avoid further effects besides just the damage. If failed, they fall to their knees, stunned for D4 rounds. And then it goes into the large intestines and stomach and the innards of the large intestines. But yeah, Cowper's glands. Thought that was it's pretty special. And the next awesome entry on the crucial damage chart is, of course, the mammary glands or breasts. Roll to determine on left or right breast. If female and pregnant, yes, he goes here. Breast milk splatters. Otherwise, the corresponding arm will suffer. -10 strength for 2d6 days. So, milk or the arm suffers. It's just a toss-up. Then future actions, etc. And then we go to... what can we find next that's really uncomfortable? Well, there's the vulva. Let's see what that's about. The external female genitalia, including the outer lips. I used to watch that show when I was a kid. It was black and white reruns, you know. I think it had that guy that maybe it was the girl. She thought she was ugly because she was actually attractive by our standards, but no, maybe that wasn't the outer lips. Maybe I'm thinking of a different title. But anyway, you roll 1d6 to determine whether the left, right, or both lips were hacked. Because, and these or this lip, S in parentheses, die and will eventually fall off. Thank you for the graphic detail. She must pass a health check at threshold 50 or be stunned for D4 rounds. Further, she will not desire sex for 3d6 months. 84%. If you roll an 84% now, this is under vulva, 84% and you're hacking the torso chart, you have, with crucial damage, struck the vagina. Or, as it's also listed on this title line, the penis receptacle. Yes, because that's exactly what it is analogously known as, the penis receptacle. Because that's its only other function. Its main thing is for, yes, awesome. So, the hacking weapon has amazingly, some would say absolutely impossibly, entered the vagina. If she is a virgin, it just gets better and better. She will either bleed excessively in addition to what one might expect, or at least spot. If you have a weapon of war shoved into your vagina, yes, I think you will spot at the very least. The damaged tissue will heal in 2d6 weeks, since this organ was designed to be penetrated. In parentheses. Well, now that's classy. 85%. Now, see, this is something I don't understand. 85% on crucial damage is the penis. So, if you roll an 84% on a man, do you re-roll because he doesn't have a vagina? If you roll an 85% on a female, do you re-roll because she doesn't have a penis? Does it change the laws of physics and suddenly these characters have these other characteristics? Why were they not the same? Why were they not the same result in the die roll? And depending on what sex the person is, that's I don't. Again, I've thought too long about this, I guess, which pretty much any time is too long. So, the vital organ dies from being, severed unless curative magic is applied. Notice there was no mention of curative magic with the all the various hacking and abuse that all the woman's body parts have been taking. There was no curative magic mentioned. But the man, he gets his penis cut off, a free willy here, and suddenly there's curative magic in this game world. Drive is permanently reduced by 20, and health by 5. And he realizes what has just been severed, and he must pass a health check at threshold 60 or be stunned for D4 rounds. Well, yeah, at the freaking least, I would say. And if you thought some of these other things were specific, according to the manhood length chart from earlier in the game, during character generation, up to 6, 12 inches, whatever it was, we know that you can also, from this hit roll chart, hit the glands or head of the penis. It's an entirely different result on the crucial damage chart. Although most of the text reads identically to just the penis, apparently you can sever just the glands, and I don't know why, but he really went into a lot of detail on this stuff. But ladies, we haven't forgotten you. Don't worry, F.A.T.A.L will not forget about the ladies. No matter how much the ladies protest, carry mace around, and threaten, F.A.T.A.L will not leave you alone for long. Because rolling 87%, and the fallopian tubes that connect the ovaries and the uterus will be struck by the hacking weapon. You roll to determine, of course, the left or right tube, because the difference, well, it's in the details, I suppose. And the notes say, to some, a dream come true. This female will only become pregnant 50% of normal odds in the next D6 months while the wound heals. The catch is she also won't desire sex for D6 months. Oh, that's tricky. Oh, and offensive, but that's okay. 88%, uterus or womb. Connects the vagina and the fallopian tubes. If pregnant, child, 80% likely, dies and is born dead. Wait, that's not the right voice for that. Mother also must pass a health check at threshold 90 or die immediately. And why? The tissue leading to the womb will heal in 3d6 weeks. Worse, above all. So he has two different adjectives here. This female will not desire sex for D6 months. Oh, tragedy. Oh, the humanity. 89% ovaries produce eggs, estrogen, and progesterone, and are walnut-sized. You can hit the ladies' walnuts with an 89% roll on the percentage chart for hacking the torso. Roll to determine if you hit the left or right nut of a woman. Her ovaries. A dream come true to some, again. This female's odds of becoming pregnant have been reduced by 50% permanently, as the ovary will not heal unless wish is applied. Now there's magic for the women. Wish. Worse, this female does not desire sex for, you guessed it, D6 months. Tell him what else she won, Charlie. The guy is incredible. It's just page after page of, you think he's topped himself. No, he's got more. He's incredible. He's like the gift that keeps on giving, and by gift, I mean a giant horse turd. Skip over most of the rest of the fumbles. As you can see, they're pretty much more of the same here in the hacking. Pardon me. And there's also bludgeoning and brawling and whatever else you can do. Spearing and penetrating and mangling and all those other things that you can do to fleshy, squishy body parts. And there's just way too many to go into, and they're all very similar, so there's not much point. So I'll go on to the crucial fumbles table. which anytime an attack skill check is made and a percentile roll before modification is either 1 or 2, regardless of your skill, a crucial fumble has occurred. Then you roll a d100 and consult the table. So you don't just take your roll. You take your roll, then you roll a d100 again, because you just need more dice, and they don't lie, so you know whatever's coming is good. So then you take your roll, and you can say it's an armor anomaly if this particular seductress, so he just automatically uses an example of a woman that you're attacking, because that's where his mind is at. But that's between him and his parole officer, and so I won't begrudge him that. In such nonsensical cases, reroll is necessary. So if the person is not wearing armor, you can't have a critical fumble. I don't really. All right. So if you roll a 1 on your D100, what did I do wrong roll, you're punished by the gods. Past that, you overextended yourself, underextended, lost your grip on the weapon, lost your balance, environmental cause such as distractions, terrain, weather, and then armor anomalies, the 85 to 100. I guess that's what he was talking about. Which I'm pretty sure most people will. Well, I was going to say most people wear clothes, but this is fatal, so. And then there's an interpretive guide. Punished by the gods. Ah, yes, the category of dread and regret. I'm feeling that right now. Most anybody does that opens this up and remembers it. Ceiling collapses on the unfortunate dungeon delver. Building topples onto the character. Lightning strikes as per the spell. Magical gate from ages past has been triggered. Indeed, Daniel Jackson. To regain the weapon during the unfortunate fumble. The orc gains a free attack. What a work. What? Plunge their short sword into the exposed back of Tenesmus. And here's if you got a polearm, awl, or pike. Here's what happens. Here's if you got a scourge. Here's what happens. Here's if you got a short sword. Here's if you got a Zweihander. Here's if you got a warhammer. Here's if you got a whip. Why it's broken down into all the... I mean, I guess, yeah. He was like, paper's cheap, ink's cheap, I'll write a 900-page book. Why does it matter? I have all the space in the world I want. So yeah, I mean, I guess you could put every single weapon in the world in there and give an example of the critical hits, but to me, I kind of would have simplified it a little, but I thank God and absolutely did not write this, so more power to him. And by that I mean, I hope he never ever is able to put pen to paper again, but otherwise more power to him in all other ways.